Welcome to Deciphering Growth, the show that explores mental health from every angle. We bring you conversations with personal opinions, stories, and practical tips. We aim to break down the stigma and help you live your best life. So please sit back and let's dive in. Before we begin, we want to remind our listeners that this podcast represents the opinions of Tiffany Graves, Eric Stone, and the show's guests. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Please consult a healthcare professional for any medical questions. The views and opinions expressed are our own and do not represent those of our workplaces. Listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content does not establish a doctor-patient relationship.
All right, we are back.
Yes, and
We're
a
back.
happy month of Pride to everyone. We are so excited to be here today. We are just excited to kind of keep bringing more structured content around Pride. So we are honored to be here today with you all. And so I just want to start off by thanking everyone that's been supporting us. We had some really great discussions and follow-up discussions after some of our episodes recently with my one and only sister, who really talks a lot about trauma media, and she has opened some doors for us to maybe have some other conversations about people with trauma at work and just trauma and media. So stay tuned for some of that. We're really excited to have more, just more conversations that are real, a little behind the curtain. And we really appreciate those of you who have reached out and given us some feedback on what we've done so far.
Yeah, we love hearing from you guys. We love kind of getting your opinions, and we would love to dive deeper into more things you're interested in if you reach out and let us know.
So we are a trauma podcast first and foremost. So with that, we are really wanting to honor the month of Pride. It is a beautiful thing. It is a happy thing. It is an honor to have some of those conversations. And also, there are some heavy things that relate to the LGBT plus community, and it's some stuff that Tiffany and I have already talked about in some other episodes. We're going to talk a little bit more about conversion therapy today and some different pieces, but I do just want to throw a giant trigger warning for anyone that is perhaps not able to listen to that or just frankly doesn't want to. That's okay. So maybe this is one you skip or don't listen to. We appreciate you tuning in so far, but we will be kind of doing more of, I would say, a deep dive today into some of those topics. So Tiffany, I know we've talked about this on mic many times. We talked about this off mic many times. Is there anything, just as we're getting started talking about the idea of conversion therapy, anywhere you want to start today?
Where do I want to start? That's a good question. How about we start with like identity ruptures that can be created because of this type of therapy?
Yeah. So if I am the client, I go to therapy, I'm trying to work through some challenges or some feelings of, and when I say challenges, because like, oh, I'm so stressed out, I don't know how to come out to my family. I could go to therapy, get conversion therapy, and then it creates a wound of like, oh, there's something wrong with me because I'm in therapy, and oh, there's something wrong with me and how I am. So, and rather than being made to feel help, now this place that's talked about being safe, being helpful, now there's this, oh, it's actually you are air quotes wrong or something going on. So it's, I think, a very all too common experience, sadly, for a lot of people within the queer community, specifically those growing up in religious environments. But Tiffany, is there anything you would like to throw out or add to this?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna read from my notes because it's early, guys. I have that identity ruptures often occur via conversion therapy when individuals experience that profound disconnection from their sense of self. That can often result in trauma, gaslighting, chronic invalidation, or unsafe environments where their authenticity is not welcomed and has been punished. And this can create other symptoms such as dissociation, depersonalization, and a very deep sense of internalized shame. I think the biggest thing too to recognize is that when identity ruptures happen, they can be especially painful because they're often invisible. Someone from the outside might look successful or composed, but they might be internally fractured or feeling fake or struggling with a lot of different internal things going on.
It's just a complicated situation that someone that is supposed to be safe and supportive not being that. I think maybe the double-edged piece of this, um, is that you could be having that experience with your guardians, with family, with loved ones, go to therapy hoping, maybe even praying that you don't have that experience there, that you'll finally have someone in your corner, and having that re-traumatization of having someone else that's adding to that shame, just adding to those wounds and not taking any away, but literally being another mark in the tally.
Mhm. Yeah.
So one of the things that I find really interesting, Tiffany, we've known each other for a minute, is like this is a year where a lot of companies have taken a step back from pride and are scared to talk or not wanting to get pushback or blowback. So it's very interesting, I think, to think about those who are comfortable with these conversations being uncomfortable and being okay for being known. Um, because I would say, we won't say names or anything, but we know of therapists that uh, have biased views about the LGBT plus community and don't think that they are biased or problematic. Um, I have grown up around settings. I won't name those settings because that's not the point of like hate the sin, love the sinner, which is very strong language. And you know, there's ways they intend that to mean, but I want to just maybe speak about for the people who are impacted by that statement that you are literally telling someone you hate a part of them, and no matter what, you're going to hate that part of them, but they love you. That is a mixed message. That is gaslighting, and that can be very toxic, and there's not a way to feel safe if that is really the view that's being expressed to you in some regular basis, so I don't want to go too off on a tangent, Tiffany, but I do want to maybe talk about that specific language does not work. That's not love. Love does not hate parts of someone. Love does not, I want to be careful how far I go off on this, but it's just, that's not love. And knowing what some of those outcomes are of not having a supportive environment, not having those protective factors, like that is not, I don't know what it's helping, but it's certainly not helping the person that you are connected to that you're saying that to.
Yeah. It I don't want to follow you too far down the rabbit hole. But like, yeah, it can be easy to say that you hate someone, but you also love them, but that's not the same thing.
And I think maybe we have to talk about if one person is hearing all the time, um, specifically within one group, what the views are from the pulpit randomly. You're talking about wellness and fruits of the spirit. Oh, and also we hate that. We hate that. We hate that part of it. We hate that part. We hate that. Love the love the person, hate the sin. That what they're gonna hear is hate. They're not hearing whatever version of love that someone thinks that is. And so that creates trauma. And we're talking about wounds left behind. That's a huge wound. And then just also, since we're talking about conversion therapy is very strongly connected with religious identifying, seeking clients. That could be just connected. That's a positive thing. It's something you ought to be doing, you should be doing, and that it would be wrong to not be work. I have a lot of air quotes if you're listening to this, a lot of air quotes, working on this. One of the things I find really interesting in the literature, Tiffany, I know we have talked about, we say air quotes a lot on this. If you look in the research, there's so many air quotes around conversion therapy because I think a lot of therapists don't like to call it therapy. And one of the things like we've kind of connected to this is like you would never do something as a treatment. One of the biggest things for therapists, social workers, marriage and family therapists is do no harm. And we can't do things that we know aren't helpful, but also that cause harm to other people. So something that would increase someone's anxiety, depression, self-harming, suicidality, riskiness, traumatize them. We would never do that as a therapy modality. And that is what conversion therapy is, statistically speaking. So we're just talking stats. You had whatever views someone may have, the the stats don't lie on this, that is what happens when someone is going through those experiences. And I just do want to pay remembrance to Leah Alcorn, someone who unfortunately died due to going through conversion therapy in the city of Cincinnati. And then within the city limits of Cincinnati, that has been banned because so many people were up in arms that this person, this teenager, was in an unsafe place going to therapy, and that made it worse. That just hit a lot of people wrong. So I hope that regardless of how someone views this, I know how I feel about openly affirming the queer community. Regardless of how you feel about that, I hope that if you hear that someone could die because of these decisions, that it would hopefully give you pause of like, maybe there's a different way to support this person or, you know, uh, go through it. So I throw it to you, Tiffany. I want to make sure I'm not going too far off the rails here, but I really enjoy talking about this because we need to have more conversations in the light of day with other people,
Mhm.
not behind closed doors.
Yeah. And going back to, uh, I don't want to take us too far back, but going back to what you mentioned about like how some people hate the sin but not the person, boy oh boy, are we talking about some cognitive dissonance being created in terms of like holding different religious beliefs of how God is love and I will be punished for being myself and creating such a dissonance within someone of trying to figure out like, oh my gosh, like God's gonna hate me for being who I am. Like, how do you
Absolutely.
like resolve that? Um, and then that can lead into that spiritual abandonment, feeling rejected by God or the divine or by any faith community for just being who they are. And that can sometimes lead
Absolutely.
into, yeah, those deep feelings of guilt and shame for participating or being subjected to, actions that violate one's core values under religious pressures. And this isn't one of there's a there. I'm not trying to say that like all religious entities function this way. I know there are some out there that are super welcoming of all genders, but we're talking about the ones that create trauma.
Yeah, you know what? Just like I don't think it would be fair if like I don't know, Tiffany, I showed up to this podcast next recording and you were like, "Hey, like why didn't you, do XYZ, like work out or reach out to people or be connected?" I'd be like, "Well, I never said I was going to do that." It's like, "Well, that's what I think people should do." Genuinely, like that is kind of what happened. Like, some of these conversations are not things that people have agreed to, but it's things that people feel like there's this. judgment. There's this verbal judgment, this outside judgment, this outside standard. And so, just like I'm not going to measure up to standards within the Amish community because I'm not practicing by those values or ideas, there is this idea of that for others. And then I also would just maybe talk about individuality. There's religion and there's spirituality. Religion is the formal institutions, the connections. Spirituality is a personal thing. Um, and we can try to speak to someone about it, but that's really between them and whatever their connection is with their spiritual world and themselves. And so you just see people pushing some of this forward. But there's this concept I talk a lot about with my veteran clients, and the idea of a moral injury. And so a moral injury, just to give us a definition, is when someone experiences a betrayal of their core values, leading to psychological and spiritual harm. So, to give an example of what we're kind of talking about today, that could be a pastor or clergy member who has said, no matter what, I will be there for you. No matter what, I will love you like God loves you. Going to them in a time of need, talking about that, and being completely rejected or cast out. I've heard way too many stories of like that in the therapy room. I'm not going to reference any of them because we keep that space private, but there are thousands to millions of stories of like that, of someone having some of those experiences when needing support. Another example is thinking about a veteran that maybe believes in the American freedom and wanting to protect the world, but then seeing, you know, photos or images or some of the complexities and crimes of war, that's a challenge to go through. So, not trying to say those are the same experience, but we can have lots of moral wounds, and this is one of them that a lot of people have with religious trauma, and very often with conversion, air quotes, therapy.
Hmm. Hard emphasis on the air quotes then.
You got to put the air quotes out. Um, so I do just think that, for those in the queer community, I grieve for you. I want to support you as much as I can. I'm so sorry that those are experiences some of you have had. Um, I, I think of like the It Gets Better project, and that's great. It's great that we want things to get better. It's great that some things are. That doesn't change though the pain that someone has already gone through though, those wounds they have. So, we talk in therapy about not wanting to be toxic positivity. And sometimes there's this temptation to glorify trauma and resilience and talk about how tough kids are and how amazing the human spirit is. And it is. And those can be true. And also, kids and people shouldn't have to be that tough sometimes to just be able to exist or get through some of the things they've gone through.
Hmm. Yeah. Life is already generally traumatic. We don't need to make it that much more harder for people.
Well, Tiffany, what time, I mean, is there anything that's kind of pinging for you here? I know I'm kind of jumping around, so I know
It's
you
okay.
come
We
prepped and
like to jump around.
focused.
That's our neurodivergence at its best. I think the other point I had for this to tie into some things that can contribute to complex PTSD and PTSD or LGBT community is that family and societal rejection. Um, so individuals that feel rejected by family or society, particularly due to their identity, their beliefs, their lifestyles, that can result in complex emotional fallout, that can include grief, loneliness, and fear and authenticity that can play into some of those trauma symptoms.
Yeah. If you're not able to be your full self for a lot of reasons,
Mhm.
that's a tough place to be.
It is. And that's the family and societal rejection, at least from what I've seen in my work, is one of the ones that like so many times it like comes and goes in waves, and it's worth remembering there's no expiration date on the pain of family rejection. Every holiday, every milestone, every time you watch other people's receive that unconditional love from a family member can re-trigger all of those symptoms.
It can even just be a social media post. I mean, Tiffany, how many times are we in a therapy session and we're hearing from somebody like, I saw it or the message or and it's not a light thing. It's real. I mean, it's just as real as if someone comes into your face and says something and your brain and nervous system really doesn't know the difference. A trigger is a trigger. You know that you were triggered, you know that you don't feel safe. Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's the other challenge of many people are forced to choose between belonging and not and authenticity. And that's a choice that no one should have to make.
I feel that in so many ways. It's just, yeah, I've not maybe in what we're talking about today with being a member of the queer community, but I do feel that of like you sometimes feel like in certain spaces, what do you what do you share and not share? How much authenticity do you have? And then when you're in those mismatched situations, like how do you handle those? How do you want to handle those? And I certainly am not going to pretend to have the answer to that, but that it can be a strange feeling. So some of those wounds have healed um, for me, and as that connects to this space, a lot of what the white evangelical male group believes and votes and does is not how I have lined up. Yet when someone looks at the world for people in that group, that technically is me. And so that's been an interesting experience that is, for the record, not as traumatic as any of the things we've talked about today, but it is just an interesting experience that I know we've talked about, Tiffany, on and off mic with me.
Yeah. Both of those things at the same time are hard, but I can only imagine how much more complex it gets with the LGBT community.
And I think, Tiffany, I'm sitting here and I have uh, people in my head that I'd love to have come on and talk about their experiences with their spirituality and religion and some of these topics we're talking about. And also, like, I have to just check my privilege that, I don't have a credential that is going to be pulled from the counseling board because I'm speaking about some of these things, versus I have multiple clergy member friends in my faith movement that have literally lost their license by signing a statement that literally just said, we think it's okay to love the queer community. That's not a sin, and it's not a sin for them to be a part of our community and to be in that community. Literally lost their whole credential, something they went and got a master's degree in, just like us. So, to me, those people are courageous, and that's the Chaga Firm signers and those that still continue to do that work. I'm inspired by their conviction and their passion and their love for their neighbor. That is all the stuff that I thought we were learning at church and in school, but it seems like some of us took it different directions. But to all of the Chaga Firm signers, I appreciate you, appreciate your conviction, and I know that it is doing, I would say, maybe even more healing than a therapist and a therapy session for some people, knowing that there are those standing out and saying that they belong. That's really healing. That would be amazing for so many of my clients if they could have that kind of moment that they're doing.
Yeah. It's nice when people, I don't know, nice maybe isn't the word I'm looking for. It's uh encouraging when you have people who are willing to stand up for others regardless of the consequences they face themselves.
I hope that when my time comes that I can say and do the same, and I think maybe speaking to our listeners who are allies, is just knowing like we can use our privilege to help. We can have conversations that are less triggering for us. than maybe someone who is within the community. And honestly, those within the community should not have to keep having to educate everyone. That's exhausting and burnout and its own kind of traumatic experience. So
Mhm.
I would just argue for some of that support and space that we can offer when we can.
Yeah. So as we are winding down today, what are some PTSD, CPTSD symptoms that if we're out and about, we're celebrating Pride, we're supporting our LGBT friends, family, community members that we can keep an eye out for so that we can make sure that we're doing our best to support them in a way that is truly supportive and not stifling. Put you on the hot
I
seat.
need to, yeah, no, it's good. I feel the need, Tiffany, to give another trigger warning because I would like to be more specific here. So I do just want to say this out loud so that if someone is listening and maybe is like, what to do. But hearing a song that maybe reminds you of a memory be a very powerful stimulus to take you back. Seeing an image online, scrolling your social media feed, hey, boom, that's where that was. That's where this is. Oh, that's them saying, or even just the wording of something can be. So I would just say, what would be things to look out for is just maybe knowing what your triggers are. And sometimes people don't know what triggers are. And I know we try not to give blanket suggestions, but is it like you scrolled that feed, you started doom scrolling, and then your teeth are clenched, your shoulders are touching your ears, your hands are just, I mean, balled into fists, you're irritable, you're not looking forward to what you were looking forward to. Those could be some signs to look out for.
Mhm.
And maybe just a desire to want to avoid some of those situations. And I just want to be really clear. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to go back to those spaces. None of us have to go back, but maybe just, avoiding reminders or, oh, I don't want to go in that town because that town reminds me of that place I was in or this conversation, that person.
Yeah. You're allowed to have your boundaries around things that you don't want to engage in for trigger reasons.
What about for you, Tiffany? Is there anything you would give as tips or suggestions for people to be looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, if you notice family member, friend shutting down from festivities or, things that are happening around, being able to just ask them if there's anything you can do, not necessarily forcing support on them, allowing people and respecting people's space when they ask for it. Um, and kind of respecting people's wishes, like if they want to celebrate, how they want to celebrate during the month of Pride.
This is big. I really want to. I feel like that's understated a little bit, Tiffany. That I think people want to help, and sometimes are like, "Oh no, like I have really good intentions." Like the road to hell is paved with good intentions, so it doesn't matter what your intent is or how much you'd like to help someone. That is selfish. It's selfish sometimes that we want to help people. It's not um, for them, it's for us. And so I would maybe just kind of that's one of the things we're taught as we're training to be therapists. Are you sharing this for them or are you sharing this for you? And if it's for you, maybe read the room. Like the month of Pride is not the time for me to talk about my religious trauma. It's just not. Not that there's anything wrong with me wanting to talk about that, but I'm not going to call up my friends in the queer community and talk about how hard I've had it. That's just not a good look and it's not helpful.
Yeah, it's not. It's not helpful at all. It actually causes more harm to any of your family, your friends, your LGBT community members that are, trying to feel more supported and more seen during this month. Which also,
100%.
I do want to just put like a quip. Like, I know we have an entire month that is like Pride Month, but like on some level, we should be celebrating Pride every single day of the year. Like, like if you're truly an ally and a supporter, like it's not just you show up for June. You show up all the time.
Or just show up for the Junes when it's popular to support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one, I don't want to get too far on my own soapbox, because that one frustrates me when like, I support it. And they only show up in June, and I'm like, this is a 365 day support system, guys.
I'm going to choose to bite my tongue. But yes, we share some things. Look at us. Look at us being so mindful. Um, if there is any conversations that anyone is looking to have about this, just let us know. We're really open, and we hope to kind of continue. Obviously, Tiffany and I being together, but also like bringing other people to the table. Um, so just, let us know how we can be supportive. We're always open to any suggestions or feedback.
Yeah. And until we talk to you guys next time, we want you to remember that healing from these types of wounds, it isn't about getting over it, my air quotes here. It's about getting into it with compassion, awareness, and support. You are not broken, you are adapting, and those adaptations are your stories of survival.
Mhm. It's beautiful. Thank you, Tiffany.
Any last minute words from you?
Happy Pride.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Deciphering Growth. We hope you found our conversation helpful and insightful. Subscribe to our podcast for more episodes and check out our Patreon for more content. Don't hesitate to contact us on social media if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing.